Hey guys, welcome to a new vlog. We are going to be reading the highest rated historical fiction book on my TBR this week, and that's according to Goodreads. But let's look at the weekly TBR, starting with the weekly quote. That is "The humblest task get beautified if loving hands do them" by Louisa May Alcott. And is that not true? That if a very attractive person does something, it makes it hot. And I'm joking, but laughing at my own jokes. But yes, if you are just being kind and if you are really just taking your time to do something, that's gonna go through into your actions, and that is fantastic. Now, what am I starting my day with? I'm going to be in this for a while. I am reading Dawnland Voices, an anthology of Indigenous writing from New England, and this is from the University of Nebraska Press. A lot of S's. This is just giving writers, Indigenous writers from the Northeast, giving them, getting their voice out there is what I'm trying to say, I guess. And that is what I'm starting my day with. I'm currently reading about the Micmac people who are from Eastern Canada, but a lot have come down into the United States. Now, the book that is the main focus of the vlog, I've already read about 40% of this book, and I will leave a link to my notes that weren't talked about in this vlog. I will leave a link to that in the pinned comment, and I think I'm going to put it in my Goodreads review. And this is The Women by Kristin Hannah. Well, again, I'm 40% into the book. I know what this book's about, but you are just tuned into this vlog. I'm going to read the description. And this is the highest rated historical fiction book on my TBR according to Goodreads. Women can be heroes. When 20-year-old nursing student Frankie McGrath hears these words, it is a revelation. Raised in the sun-drenched idyllic world of Southern California and sheltered by her conservative parents, she has always prided herself on doing the right thing. But in 1965, the world is changing, and she suddenly dares to imagine a different future for herself. When her brother ships out to serve in Vietnam, she joins the Army Nurse Corps and follows his path. As green and inexperienced as the men sent to Vietnam to fight, Frankie is overwhelmed by the chaos and destruction of war. Each day is a gamble of life and death, hope and betrayal. Friendships run deep and can be shattered in an instant. In war, she meets and becomes one of the lucky, the brave, the broken, and the lost. But war is just the beginning for Frankie and her veteran friends. The real battle lies in coming home to a changed and divided America, to angry protesters, and to a country that wants to forget Vietnam. The Women is the story of one woman going to war, but it shines a light on all women who put themselves in harm's way and whose sacrifice and commitment to their country has too often been forgotten. A novel about deep friendships and bold patriotism, The Women is a richly drawn story with a memorable heroine whose idealism and courage under fire will come to define an era. This is our main focus for the week. Y'all are going to get all my thoughts and everything on this. And again, for those chapters, the first, 15 chapters, I wasn't vlogging when I read that, but I will have a link down below if you guys want to know what my thoughts were on those chapters. Next, we have my mood read, and it is a romance, and I'm actually really enjoying it, and that is Very Sincerely Yours by Carrie Winfrey. I did not read the back of this because with The Little Liar, with my book club buddies, all of y'all are free to join the book club, don't worry, but they, or at least I know one of them, didn't read the back of the book and was shocked and everything, and I know from a lot of other like creators I watch on social media who don't read the backs of the books and then just have a really good time reading the book, discovering the book. My thing is I read the back of the book so I know what I'm talking about in my video, but I was like, I want to try it. So I didn't even really read the back of this book before I went into it. And I think I read like the first paragraph for when I talked about it in my TBR video. And then this one, I am 8 or 9 chapters in. I'll be on chapter 9 tonight. But we have our main character who is Teddy, and she thinks everything's going well in life. But then she gets dumped and she's like, what? Like she didn't see it coming from anywhere. And so she just has her life flipped upside down, you know, and is trying to cope with that. And one of her favorite things is watching this kids show that is very much like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and except it's like a 30-year-old man on the show. And she watches that show for comfort, and she's like, yeah, the guy's cute too. So I think he's going to be our romantic interest, but of her just coming to terms with who she is as a person and who she is outside of that relationship that she's been in for so long. That's my guess on what this book is about. It says, a charming and heartwarming new romantic comedy by the acclaimed author awaiting for Tom Hanks, Carrie Winfrey. That's what we're reading. And then my ebook pick that, you know, hasn't changed. Again, we're going to be here a while. And that is Go Tell the Beast, and I'm going by Diana Gabaldon. This is a very much a genre-bending book that is taking place during the American Revolution with some time travel elements involved. And that is the weekly TBR. Let me tell y'all, this is the worst Kristin Hannah book I've read. At least right now, I am at like the 50% or like 60% mark. I don't know what percent mark I'm at. Let me see actually, because I need to get my notes up. But I am stunned. I am for real stunned that this is the woman who wrote The Nightingale and The Great Alone. So I am at 59%, page 281. This character, I hate her at the moment because... Okay, we will get all into that. I need to calm down. We're seeing after the war, we're seeing when our main character, Frankie, is back in the United States after serving in Vietnam, and how it's just a very rude awakening. Nobody wants to talk about Vietnam and all of that. So we're starting with chapter 16, which is a good note. Kristin Hannah does a really good job at painting a scene. I would say this is very symptomatic. Is this Kristin Hannah trying to get a movie deal now that I sit here and think about it? I don't know, but these scenes are extremely easy to picture. And as I said, it's like she's painting a picture, painting the scene, and that is, you know, really good descriptive writing. And I have no issue with the writing style of this book. I mean, it's not my favorite, but I would give the writing a 4. It's good writing. And then, you know, yeah, we're not going to say that one. I think it could be a little spoilery. And that is happening. This is very dark, but that's war. Is there were these men who were prisoners of war, and they escape, and they are like cutting the ears, cutting off, you know, fingers and toes of the North Vietnamese who had them captive. And it says it was the kind of thing she'd seen more of in the past few months as the fighting had heated up. It was profoundly disturbing, sickening, a terrible sign that the soldiers' minds were being as broken by the war as their bodies. Now, I have a family member who did the same thing, not in Vietnam, but in, I don't know if it was in Japan, but it was in World War II. We'll just say World War II in the Pacific, because I'm not exactly sure where it was, but it was Japanese soldiers that was being done to. And I had heard the story, you know, my whole life, and it's not a close relation or anything, but I had heard this story my whole life, and I was like, whoa, that is crazy behavior. And I never realized that, because I just thought it was kind of like a hunt, you know, having a trophy of war, which I guess it could still be like that, but I wasn't thinking how the war is having this impact on the mind and on the mentality of a person, that it makes them do things that they typically want to do, and he's wanting to jump. And I had never realized that, so that was a new thought path for me or whatever. I don't know. But let me tell you, every death in this book of a soldier in the hospital, oh my gosh, it hurts. It makes me want to cry. We are just introduced to them and it breaks my heart. I hate it. I hate it. Like, you know, in a good way that I hate it. Like, this book is impactful in that regard. And just some of these things, I'm like, how is it possible? So this guy who she's close to, she's like, I'm having a really hard time. There was a village that got bombed and, you know, all of that. And, you know, the guy, he can just, yes, he is a pilot, but he magically, you know, can go to her base where she's at. It's not really a base, but, you know, go to where she's at. And I'm like, he can just take the helicopter and do that. Like, that's fine. I don't know though. I mean, I have no clue. I don't even think I've ever watched a documentary on Vietnam, if I'm being honest with y'all. It's something I definitely need to learn more about. Afraid I'll love you till I die. And the promise planted a small and terrible seed in her heart. Now, yeah. We're not going to say my thoughts on that. And I do think this is a great quote that really describes our story here. She joined the army to find her brother and found herself instead. This is a time of like women liberation. You know, women are starting to realize they are equal to a man. They can do what a man can do, and that we need to have equal rights as men. And that is, in this book, we're definitely seeing that. And we're just seeing a girl come to terms with who she is as a person and growing into the person that she was meant to become. But during war. And yeah, we finally got out of Vietnam, and I am excited to see where the story goes, but like, I shouldn't have been. But when she gets to LAX and is back from the war, you know, she's being spit on. The people have signs, and it's a repeat of the signs that were mentioned earlier. So I guess Kristin Hannah couldn't get more creative and come up with more signs. I mean, you can go to the internet and Google probably Vietnam protest signs, because there are more than 2 sayings. That's like, this is the clean version of the actual sign. It's like, bombing for peace is like screwing for virginity. We've had that 2 times. I'm like, you couldn't come up with another sign? Okay. And this is one of my favorite writers, so I feel like that's probably why I am more like triggered about this. But definitely when we see Frankie getting back to America, seeing all those signs, being spit on, and just being like disregarded, being treated like she's the bottom level of society, you can definitely feel it. Because I was shook. I was just like, oh my gosh, because I believe you can be anti-war, but I'm not anti-soldier. I'm not anti-nurse. They are doing what they're commanded to do, and it's not in their power. If you're going to be doing this, you need to be mad at whoever the world leader is, in this case, LBJ. It's not the common man's fault. Yeah. Especially in a war like this, when people are being drafted and everything, like, they don't know these soldiers' stories coming off of the plane. I was getting kind of mad about that. And then her mom's like, oh, we should go to the country club to have dinner or lunch and get you back to real life. And she's like, real life? You're telling me what I experienced wasn't real life? But the whole time she's in Vietnam, they refer to the rest of the world outside of Vietnam as the real world. There's so many contradictions. And then she's like sending a letter to her friend who has already come back from Vietnam. And mind you, when the friend was, you know, sending her letters when Frankie was still in Vietnam, she was like, it's so hard going back to being a civilian nurse rather than a combat nurse and all that. And now that Frankie is back in America and sends a letter to that same friend, she's like, why'd you never tell me how hard it was? She did. And okay, and then just all of it feels so fake of being back in America, and because it makes complete sense. Somebody's gonna have PTSD. That is totally expected, what I expect to happen. But it's the way it has been written that the character development in this, which is my biggest like issue. Okay, we see she's very scared and meek when she first goes to Vietnam, but something awful happens and that really hits something in her, and she becomes like, she's like, I'm not scared anymore. I have a job to do. I'm going to get it done. And that makes complete total sense, you know, for somebody to go through something traumatic and that changes their mindset. Then we go through more and more, and so this is like coming back to civilian life in America. Now it's obviously, as I said, going to make sense. Loud noises are going to spook her. She's going to want to jump down and hide, and she's going to have nightmares. All that is totally believable because that happens. You've probably seen it in movies and all of that, and it happens in real life. So that's totally believable, but there was no build up to that. And just reading these scenes, I'm just like, what? Like, it doesn't make sense. No, Kristin Hannah does, notices this. It's like, it wasn't like her, that burst of fury and wanting to display it, but she couldn't stop it. And then there's later on, I think that this isn't me, but it is me now. I'm angry all the time. And again, that makes total sense, but the way the character work went, it's so sudden, all these changes in her personality throughout the course of the story, not just coming back to America, but it doesn't flow well, it just happens. And there's the story, the character development, the character arc does not flow well, and that amazes me that this is coming from Kristin Hannah. Then I predicted more predictions because there's never a body. Are they really dead? And here's my note. The character work was so sudden, and seeing her going to go try to adjust to life in the real world, like getting a job and all of that. It's almost like she's entitled, but I don't think that's the right word to describe this situation. And then again, another one of her public freakouts again, because that's another thing. This is a very repetitive story. You're going to see that in my typed up notes, that it's when we were in Vietnam, it was like, okay, we're going through, casualty events, mass cow. We're going through that. Then we're going to go have some fun in Saigon, or we're going to go to the beach, have some fun. We're going to go on some side missions, going to orphanages and giving vaccinations and all of that. We're going to go party at the officers club. And it's just that, going recycled over and over. And now it's like, okay, I'm going to complain about my life in letters, and I am going to have a public freak out, and I'm going to go off about the protesters again. And it's just very recycled. Friends can just constantly be like flying out to see her. I'm like, they don't have day jobs back home, which, I mean, the book says they do, but I'm like, they can just fly across the country. Cool. It's a popular quote. Thank God for girlfriends in this crazy, chaotic, divided world that was run by men. You could count on the women. And those are all my notes for today, reading The Women by Kristin Hannah. It's happy Tuesday. Like, I look like I could be in the movie Mean Girls today, just with the amount of pink that I'm wearing. But I am here to update y'all on The Women by Kristin Hannah. I read 86 pages today, getting me to 78% of the way through the book. So I do think I will finish it tomorrow, but if not tomorrow, then Thursday. But I will finish it in this vlog, which is exciting. We could be starting a new book in this vlog as well. Like, my March TBR is going super well. I kind of revamped how I do it. So the first week I'm going to read, my book club pick. That's my first priority always in 2025, because I struggled with that in 2024. And then the rest of the month we will, so once we get through that buddy pick, buddy read pick, we're going to go with the longest book and, go down to the shortest, and then like my graphic novel read on a day that I know I'm going to be busy and might not have a lot of reading time. That's the plan with reading, just, like in the middle of the year check-in. I do need to bookmark the page that I was on, but I do want to give y'all my notes on the day. So we started on page 281. Let me get there in the book, or my notes. I do feel better. I think this is now back in 3-star range. There was just that middle section where I was so angry, and I'm feeling the feeling that the character's feeling, but I'm feeling it at her and at Kristin Hannah and at this character work. But now we're back steady how it should have been the whole time. I think that whole middle part just should have been omitted. And when I got into reading today, literally on my second page of reading, I'm like, this is like, because I was still in that middle part, I was like, this is like watching a train wreck, where I am not like, I have skimmed some sections today I did skim a little bit, but as I said, it did get better, so I stopped skimming. But where I just had a really difficult time deciding on skimming, because I was like, I want to know how far this book's gonna go on making me mad. So it was very hard to skim. And then we have the words "the women" mentioned, and I was like, is that our first time 285 pages in? Like, I don't think it would be, but you know, we've talked about how in the blurb it says, but war is just the beginning for Frankie and her veteran friends. The real battle lies in coming home to a changed and divided America, to angry protesters, to a country that wants to forget Vietnam. And that is, you know, what was currently happening in the book. We had them adjusting back to civilian life and being a veteran in a country that really pushed the veterans aside. And sadly, we still see that being done. Also, really random add-in right here, the show Rome, that, you know, it's a 20-year-old show, but I'm currently obsessed with. I think that show does a great job at showing how veterans were kind of pushed aside. Now, these were men coming back from fighting with Julius Caesar, coming back to Rome and not having trouble finding employment and just adjusting back to that family life after living as a soldier for 8 years. I think that show, even if it's, as I said, set 1,000 years ago, very similar. But we have, as we talked about, Frankie obviously has like PTSD. I think pretty much everybody has some form of PTSD after going through war. It's like her friends, they don't really bring up Vietnam that much around her because they think she's still fragile and they don't want to, you know, trigger her. But then, so it says all that. A few pages later, her friend Barb is pressuring her to go to a protest for veterans who are against the war. And I'm like, you don't think going to a protest about Vietnam is going to trigger her? That literally makes 0 sense. Contradictions. There have been so many contradictions in this book, Kristin Hannah, I do not understand. And then I like this quote. She believed in good and evil, right and wrong. The dream of America. Is any of that real? I was about to say no, it's all man-made constructs, but at the same time, take it as you will. And then we meet this guy, Henry. I'm like, he's going to be a love interest. I don't know, but that's just a vibe I was getting. I don't know if this is true coming from chapter 24, because in the book they're like, it's rumored. And I would like to know, is the Nixon administration had arrested 13,000 anti-war protesters in 3 days. That is crazy. Literally 13,000 in 3 days? That's a ton. You know, I think her brother's a prisoner of war, because it's like, and for Finn, I can't imagine him stuck in a cage somewhere forgotten. I don't know, but I'm like, he is. That's not confirmed or anything in the book. That's just, you know, me. And stuff happening at home with her, and I think it shows that, it says, it's a reminder to all of us, isn't it? Tragedy can strike in an instant, after all you've suffered. It's just saying, like, tragedy is not only going to happen in the battlefield. It's not only going to happen at war, it can happen anytime. There's a big emphasis on how Frankie keeps smoking, and I'm like, I think she's going to get cancer because books like to do that. I don't know what's going to happen. They're asking her, do you know, yeah, this was actually something that, again, something from my personal life, like that my family has told me about, is when people were prisoners of war, missing in action, there were these bracelets you would wear with the person's name and when they went missing and all of that. And then you would like take the bracelet off once the person returned. And that happened to somebody that my grandmother knew, and it happened to a neighbor. And actually the story is all, I don't know actually how much of the story is online, but the man who was a prisoner of war, he has been interviewed, and he's probably retired now, but he's working, he helped develop like the F-16 at Elgin Air Force Base in Florida, and like he's done great things since coming home from Vietnam, but he was a prisoner of war. But seeing this, like, you know, because I'd heard these stories, and then seeing it on page was pretty cool. You know, a prisoner of war, and I'm like, yes you do. Yes you do, you're gonna know a prisoner of war. And then I thought this quote was perfect because it's something that, you know, 2016 is when the world flipped, and I have just been thinking about it since then. It says, stay calm, educate, don't annihilate. And I think that can go for both sides of the political spectrum, because I would hear people being like, they're stupid. Their opinions are stupid. I don't want to fight with them. No, that's not how you get anything done, by insulting somebody, calling somebody stupid, calling somebody slurs. That's not going to get anything done. You need to calm down, be an adult, and have a civil conversation. And I was seeing this on, because there are people protesting, and I'm like, who I saw on Facebook. I'm like, I might not necessarily agree with their son. I comment on the post. It was on the local news, and because people were saying they need to be put on buses and sent to Mexico and whatever. And I'm like, I commented saying, you might not agree with what they're saying, but by the Constitution, they have every right to be out there protesting. And people were not happy with that. People were like, well, they think this country sucks so much, they should leave. Y'all know how hard it is to pick up your life and move? Do you? Yeah, I'm like, why didn't you move when your guy wasn't president? I don't know. But yeah, so I think you just, in any case, any side of the spectrum, you know, the spectrum's a wide thing. Stay calm, educate, don't annihilate. Say why you feel this way, and don't belittle somebody else just because they have a different opinion than you. I think that's one of the key to life, the key to being an adult. To this guy, because, you know, she's working the, selling, I don't know, the bracelets that I told y'all about. And this guy's like, yeah, my nephew, yeah, it was nephew, is going to the Navy Academy. I don't know if I want him to go there, because they just train these guys and send them off to war. And so Frankie said he's making an honorable choice, even if you don't agree with it. And that's like her family was very conservative and didn't think that women have a place at war, but she went off to war. So again, it can fall on two sides. Every coin has two sides, and I like that full circle moment there. And with the protest we see in this book, I think this book is incredibly well researched, and a lot of books or TV shows, movies that you see set during Vietnam, it's like everybody's protesting, that's the right thing to do, whatever. And I just don't think a lot of authors and creators have done a lot of research on it. I think this book really just shows all sides, again, of the spectrum, and showing why people feel the way that they feel. And I think that's so important to show that in historical fiction, because, you know, so much in history, they say it's only the winners that tell history. But I think this is showing just so many different perspectives, even though we only have, one POV, but we're just seeing how all these different beliefs, and it's just so well researched, and I really appreciate that from Kristin Hannah. And then we have our girl throwing up twice. I'm like, she's probably pregnant. Very different thing. But yeah, we're seeing her work at a hospital, and they're like, the surgeons like, this is so strange, why are there 30-year-olds with cancer, with tumors? And sadly we now know that Agent Orange did cause cancer in people. Awful. If you really look into it, when I first, and I'm not gonna say when I first heard about it, but they're on Stranger Things, Hopper, you know, I love Hopper, but his character is a Vietnam vet, and there's actually a book, no, it's not in here, it used to be, that is told at Hopper's perspective, but before the events of Stranger Things, and it really goes into his character, and I think it's a great character study on him, and how he was a Vietnam vet and everything. He has a big monologue on the show about that, about how he handled Agent Orange, and it's awful. And then one of my theories, I'm not going to say, but one of the theories I've discussed in this video, I knew it, I was right, and then the last page that I read today, it was like, OMG, oh my gosh, this plot twist, crazy. And that's where I'm going to end this clip on. I'll be back later, probably to update y'all on Very Sincerely Yours. It is time to give y'all an update on Very Sincerely Yours. I got to 26%, which is also the 100 page mark, chapter 16. What is happening in here? We just had our first contact between, you know, between our characters, our male and female, not POVs. I'm like, what am I can't talk. Does cold stuff like dry out your, because I just had ice cream, I feel like it dried out my mouth. I don't know, but let's talk about what I like about this book, you know, my thoughts so far. So characters, I love these characters. I see a little bit of myself in all of them, and like even the side characters. And also I see other people that I know in these characters. And that was something when I was reading last night where I realized, I'm like, that's something great about fiction. It helps you understand people and the people around you. I'm not going to say who I'm talking about, but, and I don't think this person watches my videos, but when I was reading Teddy's arc, or Teddy's, you know, her character story yesterday, I was like, oh my gosh, this is just like this person I know. And maybe that's why this person is the way that they are. And that's just something great about fiction, that it helps you understand people. And I guess that's empathy. You know, we always talk about empathy here. Yeah, it just is such a realization, like a light bulb moment, and you're like, oh my gosh, everything makes so much sense. But yes, this cast of characters is so wholesome. I love it. Atmosphere, that doesn't play a huge part. It usually doesn't in romance, but this is taking place in Columbus, Ohio. And Myrtle Beach got mentioned, and let me tell y'all, like, if you ever see those charts, it's like, of what state hates what state, it's like South Carolina, their most hated state is Ohio. I have nothing against Ohio. I went there, and literally, the nicest people. And literally, like, when I went to Cleveland, they might have been Indians at the time, I don't remember, but I went to one of their games, and when I would tell people that I was visiting from South Carolina, it was my first time to Cleveland, my first time at the stadium, obviously, my first time seeing the team. They were all just so sweet. And like, there was this one guy, he was like, oh my gosh, I want to go to Myrtle Beach so bad. And funny thing, so y'all know I'm a big aviation geek and have like flight radar on my phone. And I saw a plane fly over and I was like, it's from Myrtle Beach. Like, not when I was talking to the guy, but later on, like, Ohio loves Myrtle Beach. They love South Carolina, and that's great. We love that for them. Writing, this is very like straightforward writing, and I love it because this is how I would write like a modern book, because you know, like historical is my preference for like my own writing, but like if I'm writing something like modern, contemporary, this is how I would write it. It's just so straightforward and just puts everything out there that you need to know, and I love that. It just makes things so easy to read, because like I only started this on the 7th, I think, maybe the 8th, and I'm already on page 100, because what is today's date? Today is the 11th, so I am just making really good pace with this. I don't even like, you know, look at my phone. There's short chapters, like less than 10 pages, you know, and it's just very easy and accessible to read. But there is one thing I don't like about the writing. We do have the use of parentheses a lot, and I personally just do not like parentheses at all in my writing. If you can't get your point across with just the, you know, the normal text, what is the purpose of having the parentheses? So I do skip the parentheses because I feel like they usually don't add anything to the story. It's just little, like, I don't want to say dumb details, but like little details that don't really add anything. So he daydreamed about having his own show and made his first puppet, an amateurist but enthusiastic dog. So that's saying like what kind of his first puppet is. And then of Miss Piggy, misunderstood diva who knew her worth, surrounded by people, or rather puppets. Like, yeah, we know on the Muppet Show, they're Muppets. Like, you don't need to tell me that. And like with something as iconic as like Miss Piggy and Kermit and all them, like everybody knows what that is. You don't need to clarify. I personally just don't like parentheses in my writing. And then plot, again, this is so wholesome, and I love that both characters have their like own stories going for him. So with Teddy, she's getting out of this breakup or this relationship, and y'all know I hate when there's the ex-boyfriend trope or whatever, but here I think it's done quite well, because Teddy doesn't really think the relationship is that bad, even though everyone around her is like, that guy was awful, like get over Rick, and yeah, get over him. But she's like, he wasn't that bad. I enjoyed myself. I was happy. And obviously, like, we can see, like, we're like, Teddy, he wasn't that great for you and all of that. But it's not to, like, just her complaining all the time. And she actually is moving on with her life. And that is her goal right now. She's like, how do I become my own person after leaving that relationship? Or, you know, she didn't leave, she got dumped, but after being dumped, and having her life, like she's moved out and all that. So she's like, how do I become my own person for the first time in my life? And then with Everett, who is our male character, so he is the puppet. Oh, and she works at a toy store. I was like, not Toy Story, toy store, and I love that. And it's like a vintage toy store, which is so cool. But okay, then we have Everett, who he is here it's like ETV, like, you know, the local TV channels that like Arthur comes on, you know. It's different in different states. They've said what it is here, but I don't remember. But there's like local TV shows and all that. So he is local to the Columbus area, and he has a puppet show that is very reminiscent of Mr. Rogers. Kids will, like, there's a segment on the show where a kid sends him an email, you know, with some kind of question, and he answers it with the puppets, and it's just so heartfelt and so wholesome. And so that's what he's doing. But he's currently experiencing, I don't know if you would, like, he's having like a block, you know, with writers, it's writer's block, where he's really so he's struggling to come up with new ideas for the puppets and for the TV show, and we're seeing him deal with that and dealing with the show. And he's a bit of a workaholic, and all his people around him are like, Everett, you need to calm down. Like, you can't be doing this all the time. You're going to be burnt out. So then they are exchanging emails, because I hope all this isn't, okay, it's not a spoiler. It says on the back of the book. So Teddy is having her problem. She's like, I need to find my thing. So she emails the show, even though she's an adult woman, when usually it's kids who are emailing the show. So she messages him for advice, and that is how this all starts. And that's where I just told you, that's where I'm at in the story, is the first contact between the two. Yeah, it's so wholesome. I am loving this. Definitely recommend it. I discovered it through YouTube, or yeah, it had to be YouTube. I don't remember whose channel, but thank you to whoever it was, because this is just so unique of her writing into this TV show, and the fact that it's like Mr. Rogers, who's like the nicest guy ever, and then she works at a toy store, so your inner child is going to love this book. Happy Wednesday. I just finished The Women by Kristin Hannah, and I thought it would be fun to do Kaw Pow with y'all, and I need to see how many pages that actually was. So I know it ended on 469, but where did I start today? 367, so 102 pages is how many I read. It did not feel like that much. This book definitely is like a great pace. The pacing is fantastic. I would say medium paced. Oh yeah, gonna need my pen to write. So I'm not going to be unhauling this book, even if it's not my favorite Kristin Hannah book. But Kristin Hannah is one of my favorite authors, so I do want to keep the book. And I just wonder if at a different point in life I might feel differently. Okay, I didn't realize the pages were red, so hopefully, okay, this ink does show up. We're going to start with characters. We'll actually talk it out as we do it, like how I do my review. Any bad thing that could happen, basically every bad thing except rape, that could happen, happened to Francis Frankie McGrath, and it was just trauma galore. In Vietnam, there were a few good moments, you know, like at the officers club and all of that, but basically after that, no, her life was miserable. I don't understand the appeal of reading something like that. Now, I know when somebody goes to war and when they come back, that they're not going to be the same person. That's just, you see too much, do too little, you know, the list goes on and on. That is going to change who you are as a person. I know that. And I know that, like, that's the thing with this book. I know that people go through this, and it is definitely, people went through this, and I acknowledge that, and I acknowledge that it is not their fault for their mental health. It's just chemicals. I don't know how it's your brain. It's not, you can't help what trauma did to you. That's just, you know, I don't know how to really explain it because I'm not a professional, but the thing is that there is so much telling rather than showing on the character work. Because this story, if you just tell me the main plot points, like, okay, we have Frankie, her brother goes off to war, she follows him to war, okay? She is a nurse, and when she first gets there, she's very scared to do anything nursing related. She's scared to perform surgeries and all of that. She's scared of being at war. Makes total sense. A very traumatic event happens where she loses a friend. After that, she's strong. She really blossoms, kind of in a bad way, but like the phoenix rises out of the ashes. She is strong, she's determined, and she's gonna do what it takes. She knows that she has a mission here in Vietnam and she's going to do it. Again, all that makes sense. She comes home to a divided America and is just very angry, and there's a lot of emotions bubbling inside of her that she doesn't know how to handle. That makes sense. And then we see the process of dealing with all those emotions and the fallout of it. All of that makes complete sense, and that is how I expect people's veterans stories to be. Now, obviously, there are hundreds of thousands of veterans. Everybody's story is going to be different. I don't want to generalize, but you know, that sounds like what you're going to get in books with veterans and whatnot. Okay, it's that we were told Frankie's not scared anymore, or she's having a fit at a party, or in the middle of a restaurant. Not going to go into post all of that, of how she deals with that. And we're being told this rather than being shown. Actions speak louder than words, in my opinion, and we are not actually seeing that. This character arc was very sudden, sporadic, and I absolutely hate the character work in here. I don't think this is a character-driven work, and Frankie's a Mary Sue, in my opinion. I would say she's a Mary Sue. But as I said, the story arc makes sense if you tell it how I just told you everything that happens, but then actually seeing that on page, it was not executed properly at all. I did like one character, I like Jamie. With the romantic interests, plural, you can definitely feel the chemistry, but with the female friendships, I don't think they were told well. I did not feel a connection between the friends, and honestly, that's kind of sad. If you want that, check out The Sunshine Girls by Molly Fader. Characters, I'm gonna give a 2, because I think good in theory, and I did like one of the characters, and I do think the romance was written well. Atmosphere, some of this plays into plot, where I think this is incredibly well researched. Do we put that in atmosphere? And I'm like, do I give that a 4 or 5? I feel like if I have to question, I should go with 4. We will do that. Kristin Hannah's great at immersing you into a scene, at painting a picture, putting you into that landscape. Like, it's such vivid images, because when I think of Vietnam, I have some magazines that my grandma had from, you know, back when it was actually happening. So I'm seeing rice paddies, I'm seeing the boats with the fans on the back. We have them here. It's not just a war thing, but that you go in swamps, those kind of boats, and seeing soldiers on those, and I'm seeing helicopters, which, I mean, that's on the cover of this book. And then I've seen pictures of like modern day, like Saigon, and that's how I picture Vietnam. And then we have San Diego and Coronado. Oh, I love Coronado, y'all. When I went to Coronado the first time, I had to go back like I don't think I went back the next day, but I went on a tour of San Diego, and then I was like, yeah, we're going back to Coronado. And we did. Yeah, so I do think that was all just done very well. I don't know why I'm not giving it a 5. I'm just not getting the 5-star vibes. So we're moving on to writing now. Writing, I would give a 4. Again, the pace was fantastic. This book is nearly 500 pages, but I don't know how many. I read it from the 7th to the 12th. So what is that, like 5 days? This reads incredibly quick, and that's, my friend asked, do you mean page number or plot? Which one's fast paced? Plot, I think it moves very organically, moves very well. Page, like, I flew through this. I read it very quickly. I wouldn't say this is my favorite writing style, like how it's actually like the prose itself, but I do think it's good, and I think it's accessible and easy to read. So just because it's not my favorite writing style is why we're going to do it a 4 than a 5. Now, call pal, so P is next. Plot. The plot, I do think this is definitely, the plot is the best thing here. Again, incredibly well researched. In the author's note, Kristin Hannah had the idea of writing a Vietnam novel back in 1997. This was published in 2024, so I don't know how many years that is. Like, is that like over 30 years? No, it's not over 30. Yeah, it's 20 something years. Because she just did not think she was mature yet as a writer, and it was such a big topic to tackle. But this is the best that I've seen of this era of the 1960s, 1970s, because you're going to see Vietnam mentioned in like The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, maybe, I don't know. I remember there were like protests in there, but I think that was more for gay rights. But you're in like Daisy Jones and the Six, we have a character go to Vietnam. And so many of these historical fiction books, Vietnam is mentioned because, I mean, we're going to get to that in a minute. But this has been the best researched one because like you'll have people going to protest and all that, but it's like, what does that really mean? What are they actually protesting? What was actually happening in Vietnam? What were the American civilian citizens being told was happening in Vietnam? I think this is incredibly well researched. Oh yeah, we're seeing like all sides of it. We're seeing people who think war is an honor, to go to war, to be very patriotic about their country. Then you see that start to unravel. We go from like LBJ to Nixon, and seeing how different maybe offices handle, presidents handle the war, and just seeing that decline of people are starting to not trust their country, not trust their government, and realize that everything in America might not be as it seems. And what was this war? What was the point of this war? And was it worth it? And you're just seeing all different sides of the political spectrum. And I think that was fantastic to show on page. I did predict a lot of things, but I'm not unhappy about that. And the end, oh my God, the end had me emotional. It really did. And I really did like the ending. Plot, am I going to give the plot a 5? Yeah, we're going to give the plot a 5. Intrigue, I think we're going to do a 3. I only struggle with intrigue. So that's like, did I want to, like, was I wanting to know what would happen? As I told y'all, it was like watching a train wreck at some points because I was just so mad. This book made me angry. And that when it asked on Fable, what was my reaction? How do I feel? It's going to be angry. This book, on Tuesday, I was like, or Monday, I was raging. I was so angry. Logic, again, I think the logic was really bad. There were so many contradictions. So we're going to put a 2 for that. And for my overall enjoyment, I'm going to give that a 3. Let's do the math here. We're getting the calculator out. Do I think this is the worst Kristin Hannah book I've read? Yes, I would say so. But 2 plus 8 plus 8 plus 5 plus 3 is 26. We're going to divide that by 7, and we get a 3.71. So I will put that in as a 3.75. So that is going to actually go in as a 4-star, guys. That's actually very shocking. Just because the character work was so awful, I am stunned that I'm actually giving this basically a 4-star. But tomorrow, I need to take my bookmark out. Also at the end, I don't know if it's going to be included in the book. Maybe I'm not going to show y'all that. But it was a historical thing in the author's note that I thought was really good. Tomorrow we will start my nonfiction pick. This is a shiny cover, but Iron, Fire, and Ice, The Real History That Inspired Game of Thrones by Ed West. I will be starting that one tomorrow. I'm going to go, I'm probably going to eat my dinner first, yeah, and feed the cats. And then do my book review is what I'm trying to say. Happy Thursday. I'm going to head out to read outside in a little bit. I did get a new spring blankie right here, but I haven't put it down here yet. And Fred's in my bed. Fred and Penny are both in here, and it looks like Penny just woke up, but they're both snoring because they're old. They're a little overweight. Fred might not be, just a little overweight, but they're snoring. I just wanted to talk about a few things with my reading. So with Dawnland Voices, I read several poems today, and I wanted to read this one section. Okay, I need to make sure it's the right part. I've never seen them dance, nor heard the people sing. The realm of spirit things slips by. Mystery seems to shun this world of asphalt grids, concrete minds, anxious hearts, strangers to the healing earth. I think it was last week's vlog, maybe the vlog before that, I talked about how there's not really a magic in the world anymore. We don't really, I don't want to say we don't believe in spirits, but it's not like it was, 5,000 years ago or something, because I mean, obviously there's like the Holy Spirit, and I know different religions have, their different beliefs for spirits. but how people, like I talked about last week, people being scared of the dark because they back, let's say, 3,000 years ago, they would hear like wolves howling and hear things that are like natural, but they didn't know what that was. And they didn't know where thunder came from. They didn't know where lightning came from. They didn't have an explanation for that. So they were like, it's spirits. When now we're like, oh, okay, this is like, we know the science behind all of those things, but still, it's still ingrained of us and some of us to be scared of the dark, or maybe we don't want to hear scary stories when we're in the dark. And that's just really intriguing. But how this says the concrete minds and all of that. So this is just going more into it, saying now as we are more in that modern society. The poet was born in 1940, by the way, but as we're more in this modern society, the realm of spirit things slips by. And I mean, take that as you will. And I want to say who this was by. Alice Azor. And this was in the poem Someday I Will Dance in Dawnland Voices. So I wanted to update y'all on that, but I am starting the new book in about 20 minutes here. And this is Iron, Fire, and Ice, The Real History That Inspired Game of Thrones by Ed West. So I wanted to read the description with you guys, and yes, I will be annotating. But a young pretender raises an army to take the throne. Learning of his father's death, the adolescent, there we go, dashing and charismatic, descended from the old kings of the north, vows to avenge him. He is supported in this war by his mother, who has spirited away her 2 younger sons to safety. Against them is the queen, passionate, proud, strong-willed, and with more of the masculine virtues of the time than most men. She too is battling for the inheritance of her young son, not yet fully grown, but already a sadist who takes delight in watching executions. Sound familiar? It may read like the plot of Game of Thrones, yet that was also the story of the bloodiest battle in British history, fought out at the culmination of the War of the Roses. George R. R. Martin's best-selling novels are rife with allusions, inspirations, and flat-out copies of real-life people, events, and places of medieval and Tudor England and Europe. The Red Wedding, based on actual events in Scottish history. There are spoilers for Game of Thrones here. The poisoning of Joffrey Baratheon, eerily similar to the death of William the Conqueror's grandson. Okay, the Dothraki, also known as Huns, Magyars, Turks, and Mongols. Join Ed West as he explores all of Martin's influences, from religion to war to powerful women. Discover the real history behind the phenomenon and see for yourself that truth is stranger than fiction. I'm seeing what all he's written about. So My Kingdom for a Horse, 1066, before all that, Saxons versus Vikings in 1215 and all of that. So he was a former deputy editor for the Catholic Herald and popular Twitter personality. That shows this is dated, but this is what I'm going to be starting today, and it's going to be my next read. Before I do our nightly update and then, eventually end out the vlog, I had to run some errands today. Like, I had to go to the bank and then, get some lunch after that. But between the 2 places, I went to a little free library at a local park, because I would typically go tomorrow, but tomorrow I'm going to be in Myrtle Beach. I did find a book. It is kind of wet. I did do an antibacterial wipe over it because there was like some dirt on the bottom. Just some grime, but I got it all cleaned up. And the dust jacket's wet, so maybe I should take the dust jacket off because the physical book isn't wet. But this is The Magic Strings of Frankie Presto by Mitch Albom, who wrote The Little Liar, which we read in last week's vlog and is my buddy read, my book club pick for March. I really enjoyed that. I gave it like a 4.75 or something. I don't remember the exact I gave it a high rating, the highest this year. So obviously I want to check out more of this man's books. He creates his most unforgettable character, Frankie Presto, the greatest guitarist ever to walk the earth, in this magical novel about the power of talent to change our lives. So this guy's a rock star and all that. So with its Forrest Gump-like journey Through the music world, The Magic Strings of Frankie Presto is a classic in the making. A lifelong musician himself, Mitch Albom delivers an unforgettable story. Everyone joins a band in this life, he observes. But it is through music, family, friends, or lovers, and those connections change the world. And that's so true. So only the dust jacket is kind of wet, so I am going to probably put it outside. I don't know, because I don't know where I should dry this out at. Maybe in my sunroom. Yeah, you can kind of see there's some water damage to that. But as I said, the physical book itself is not wet. I mean, it is kind of where I wiped it, but that's only because I just, I literally just wiped the book down. And oh my, this is quite the thick book. Yeah, nearly 500 pages. But with his other book I read, it read very fast, and it looks like this one, the short chapters as well, which we love. But I am here to talk about Iron, Fire, and Ice. I'm just going to put that right up there. I know y'all can't really see it that well, but we're going to talk about that book. I only got to 10%, which was 44 pages, right? Just nonfiction is a lot heavier than reading fiction, in my opinion. You're taking in a lot of facts. I was so tired during the 3 o'clock reading hour. I was reading outside, and I literally was like, I'm going to fall out of this chair by falling asleep. I did not, and I have had caffeine since, because I'd only had water and up until then, and I've had kind of a migraine. Might be a migraine. It feels like it could be one. That was bothering me, but since I've been, eating and everything, I do feel a little better. Don't tell me to feel better in the comments, because it's not that bad. It's literally just hormones. It happens every month. Let's go through my tabs for this book. And this is nonfiction, so the tabs, the colors, whatever, they don't mean anything. There's no rhyme or reason. So chapter 1 is the realm. First this instance here. Families placed great importance on their pedigree, in particular a link to the conqueror, which is William the Conqueror, and his companions, through him to the ultimate forefather of medieval Europe, Charles the Great, King of Franks, who in AD 800 had been crowned Emperor of the West in Rome. So is that Charlemagne? Because later on it does talk about Charlemagne and refers to him as Charlemagne. So who's Charles the Great? This one, on page 5, because there was an introduction that was in Roman numerals, I was like, I don't know if this is this boring or if I'm really tired, so I don't know. We will have to see tomorrow, which y'all won't see, but in next week's vlog, we will have to see if it is actually a boring book or if I was just super sleepy while reading it. And this one, we're talking about the world, like the physical world of Westeros and Essos and all of that, and then our world of what did what did medieval people know about the world around them? Like, did they know there was America? Did they know Australia existed? Blah, blah, blah. And so people thought India covered half the world, while others believed that there were 3 Indias, one ruled by Prester John, a legendary Central Asian king Europeans believed would help them win the Crusades. Letters supposedly from the magnificent ruler circulated in the 12th century stating, I, Prester John, am the Lord of Lords, and I surpass all the kings of the entire world in wealth, virtue, and power. Milk and honey flow freely in our lands. Poison can do no harm, nor do any noise frogs croak. There are no scorpions, no serpents creeping in the grass. This exotic faraway kingdom was filled with diamonds, emeralds, and other precious stones, as well as peppers and elixirs that would cure all sorts of ailments. And I'm like, who came up with that? Because that is obviously a scam. And I'm so curious what the background to this Prester John guy is. I can't wait to look into that. That's something with this. A lot of these tabs are just me wanting to look into things. Like Marco Polo. I did start that show. I think it was on Netflix when I was in high school. And little like 15-year-old me was like, whoa, this is a lot. It's probably like rated mature. Yeah, on Netflix I never know what things are rated or whatever, especially back then I wouldn't have known. And I saw that and I was like, yeah, I don't think I need to be watching this. But now that I'm an adult, I think I can handle mature themes. I'm really interested to know more about Marco Polo, and I didn't know he went to Russia where he saw dog sledding and wrote that people have all their houses underground because of the great cold that is there. In this icy land there are sables and ermines and squirrels and black foxes, which they make skins and furs and blah blah blah, all this stuff about Russia. So I had no idea that Marco Polo went to Russia. I thought he just went to like Mongolia or somewhere. I don't know. Now we have the Iron King, which is about Philip, who was King of France, and with the Accursed King series, which one of the books is back there behind me, he was a character in that. That's who the first book, I think it's the first book, is named after. Saying how French was the language of the ruling class in England, Flanders, and basically it's saying all the way from Ireland to Jerusalem, most of Italy. I had no idea about that. Like, I never thought of Italians speaking French. And this one about Notre Dame, or Notre Dame, because we are in France. So it's a great cathedral. Notre Dame had been completed on the site of the temple to Jupiter, dating to the Roman city of Lucia. No, I don't know that's how you say that. But Notre Dame was on the site of a temple to Jupiter. No, I had no idea about that. I thought, I was just like, Notre Dame, it's been there forever. That was incredibly fascinating to learn about. Page 24, this is my note. This is really like, here is medieval history. I said here are some snippets, but really the majority of this is medieval history with a tad of Game of Thrones. It's just random excerpts from all over medieval history, and I know a lot of this because that was my hyperfixation for a long while, was like Tudor era, War of the Roses era, especially when I was getting into watching Game of Thrones for the first time and reading the book series back in like 2017 or when I would have loved this book back then. I think I got this book in 2020. Then I love Melusine, I forget how you say her name, but in The Lady of the Rivers, it's talked about there. That's where I first heard about and kind of gave me my inspiration with Cersei back here. But this is so about the Plantagenet family. Legend had it that Fulk's grandmother had been Melusine, a dragon disguised as a woman who was one day exposed during mass, only to fly off shrieking with 2 of her children. Melusine was a popular figure of early medieval folklore in western and northern France, often appearing as a fish or snake, seductive and supernatural, but a bringer of evil, like her near namesake Melisandre, the Red Woman of Westeros. Melusine often appears in spinning yarns, stories told by ladies as they spun cloth, and was most likely once a pagan-era water fairy, magical creatures believed to be capable of bringing all sorts of disasters, and who sometimes swapped people's children with changelings. In the tales of King Arthur, the Lady of the Lake is supposed to be a water fairy. So I really like Melusine, so I love to see that in here. And we see lions are often on people's family crest, or in Game of Thrones they say sigil. Even on mine personally, we have red lions. It says a theory that was not tested, so best not tested, so don't sue me for reading this out loud, that lions were, and this is coming from the 13th century bestiary in the Bodleian Library in Oxford. The merciful nature of lions is confirmed by numerous examples. They will spare man lying on the ground and will lead captives with whom they meet to their home. They will attack men rather than women. They only kill children if they are exceptionally hungry. And you see that in media all the time. And I thought it was just, a Hollywood thing that they came up with, but no, it's actually like historical people believe that. Edward Longshanks, which I watched the movie Braveheart over the weekend, so that was like, Braveheart did get mentioned on here, not on this page, but he is the King of England in that movie, and so Edward would switch sides or do anything to win, and I'm like, I love reading about that in fiction, but I hate it in real life politics. See, the Reigns of Castamere is actually based on the Song of Luz, who was about Edward Longshanks. Did I say? I hope I didn't say Shawshanks earlier, but Longshanks. And I'm like, wow, who knew? Like, even things like the Reigns of Castamere, the song like, who are you? The proud lord said that a lion has bow so low. Only a cat of a different coat is all the truth I know. Oh, and so he spoke, that Lord of Castamere. Yeah, that was based on an actual thing in history. I thought that was just, you know, so I'm like, wow, this whole show was like based, like everything, every single thing. This quote, I don't know if this is a real guy or if this is from Game of Thrones, but past a certain point, all dates grow hazy and confused, and the clarity of history becomes the fog of legend. This is about the first men. So who were the first people to inhabit the British Isles? And then we had the first men in Game of Thrones. We had like the children of the forest, who would be like Neolithic and Preolithic. I don't think that's the right word, but people in Britain. And so the Isles of Great Britain, the British Isles, they consist of 6,000 islands in total, and 132 are inhabited. So that's crazy. 6,000 islands in total, but only 132 have people living there. The least populated is St. Kilda off the Outer Hebrides, and that island only has a summertime population of 15 people. That is, I want to look up that place. And then I watched a great video today. I'll have to remember to link it, but it was, what did people in the past know about their own past? And there is this cave in Iberia, so in Spain, and that had, you know, like the caveman drawings where there are horses and hunters painted on the walls. But a few thousand years, Romans discover this cave, so they're like, this must be from the gods or something, but they also see it as a holy place and have maybe a cult there. And so I've always wondered what people in like the Romans, when they came across things from those time periods. Like I had the Venus of Willendorf right here. So I found this figure, you know, this is a copy of that figure in present day Austria. The Venus figures, nobody knows what their purpose was, why these were made. I only think of, well, what if, so that was, you know, thousands and thousands of years ago. So let's go 2,000 years ago to the Romans when they are conquering Europe and, you know, doing all that, making an empire. Did they ever come across like Venus figures? What did they think of them? That's only something that has fascinated me, coming to like ancient classical people coming across prehistoric things left behind by prehistoric people. And it says, to those living through the Cousins' War, which is the War of the Roses, the history of the island stretched back into a distant, murky past. Men knew of different peoples who had once walked the land, and that a great race called the Romans had conquered it. Supermen capable of every feat imaginable. These Latins had left large stone buildings across Britain, but many people considered them to be a breed of giants, and some actively avoided Roman buildings as they thought them haunted. I thought that was super interesting. Okay, I have a lot on these 2 pages. And so most of what we know of prehistory is through bones and stones. At the time, the House of Lancaster and York were fighting over the realm. People had very different ideas of the past. So what people in, you know, War of the Roses time England in 1138, Geoffrey Monmouth, who wrote King Arthur, that legend, and the one that you will read, that's the version I read. He was like their historian, but we'll get more into if it was actually right. So his version said it explained that the first inhabitants of the islands were giants. They were followed by Trojans who fled the city after its destruction, and then led by Aeneas's descendant. It's commonly believed in Tudor England that the Romans had built the Tower of London 1,500 years before. In fact, the Normans had only 4 centuries previously. Isn't that interesting? And how I was just talking about how Geoffrey Monmouth, a lot of people, how a lot of what he was saying was BS. So educated Westerosi believed their ancestors to be credulous, just as some Renaissance humanists did in the late medieval Europe. So while educated people in the Middle Ages would not have known about the Beaker people, so Neolithic people, they understood that stories told of Brutus and one-eyed giants were most likely untrue. Some of Geoffrey Monmouth's contemporaries, highly educated men with access to a wide range of sources, believed him to be an outright liar. So people, they knew he was wrong. And that is the vlog for this week. I read, so far this week, I've read over 100 pages every day. I don't know if it's going to be possible today since I only read 45 pages in Iron, Fire, and Blood. Yeah, and Ice, sorry, I keep saying Fire and Blood. I don't know if it's going to be possible or not. I do think that this book, we will continue it into next week's vlog, and then after we finish that, we will read Before We Were Yours, which is set in Memphis during the Great Depression. These children get sent to an orphanage. They get kidnapped and basically sold away to rich families. But I'm going to have to be ending the vlog here. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you made it all the way through, leave a green emoji in the comments below. And as always, comment, rate, and subscribe. And don't forget to ring that notification bell to be notified when all my videos go live. I'll see you in my next one. Bye!